The last time I spoke on the misinterpretation and misapplication of school policy. That appeared to fall on deaf ears. When this process began, many people spoke very highly about Mr. Freshwater's character. That apparently fell on deaf ears. Many people spoke about the excellent job Mr. Freshwater did and how he should not be suspended. That apparently fell on deaf ears. Many people asked that Mr. Freshwater be reinstated before the process got costly. That apparently fell on deaf ears. One fact that cannot be allowed to fall on deaf ears was reported this past January the 5th, by the Columbus Dispatch. I quote, "Legal costs already top $200,000. He was speaking about the costs of the hearing for Mr. Freshwater. This travesty and waste of resources cannot fall on deaf ears. How many trips could $200,000 afford? How many glow sticks could $200,000 afford? How many teachers could $200,000 afford? How many books for our library could $200,000 afford? How many scientific experiments to replace the Tesla coil could $200,000 afford? This waste of resources cannot fall on deaf ears. In the economic situation that our community is in, the waste of $200,000 and growing cannot fall on deaf ears. This community needs to be aware. This community needs to hold those, whether on this board or someone else, who made the decisions to cause this waste to come to a head, cannot fall on deaf ears. This community must hear it, this community must understand, and it must be held accountable. $200,000.
We have 4 individuals who would like to speak on the retire-rehire issue. Before I begin calling those people, I just wanted to state for you where the board thinks we are headed at this stage. We, as some or many of you might know, we have posted the position of the Director of Teaching and Learning, I think is the correct title, both in the community and outside the community. We are beginning to receive resumes for that position. I believe I will speak with some trepidation on behalf of the board at this stage. We would very much like to have this position filled as soon as possible by one of those applicants, whoever they turn out to be. However, in the meantime, on the chance that either we cannot find anybody that's appropriate in that grouping, or the individual that we find is under contract until July 1st, and cannot be released, which can happen. We feel that we need to have the flexibility to retain Mrs. Weston for a limited time to get through some processes that have to occur in the springtime. This would be a limited term engagement. We're talking months, not years. We're talking very few months. That is not our first choice, certainly. I repeat myself on that. But if we cannot find a permanent person to fill that position prior to probably spring break, we will have to have a plan B in effect. First person on the list to speak is William Purcell.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate the the board opening up the public discussion for comments, I think it's important. I don't know whether you've always done this, whether the board has typically had the open discussions, but I think it's a valuable portion to have in every board meeting, because they vote on you every 2 or 3, 4 years. I know it's sometime in November. But anyway, I want to do thank you for that. When it was put in the newspaper, and I wasn't sure whether that was required by law to have that in there, because the date was wrong, and so I didn't know whether that kicked everything out the door, because you had it for the year 2008. So I didn't know whether the proper date had to be in there before it could be officially spoken about. So I wasn't sure whether it was required, but if it were required, you probably were also required to have the proper date. And I think that you do have a divided community here. There's, as you know, several things going on, and right now with Mrs. Weston going to appear as one of the witnesses against the school board, I would think that you would have some reluctance about hiring someone who's going to be testifying against the school board, as I understand it. One of the things that I've had people tell me that Mrs. Weston has done an excellent job with the elementary teachers and in that curriculum, and I know that's where her specialty is. And if you are put in a position where you would have to do a rehire, I would suggest that you have it limited to the elementary side, because I know of enough people that are on the middle school side, high school side, people who have tried to be hired in the Mount Vernon School District. They just tell me all kinds of horror stories about their contact with Mrs. Weston. I know of at least one occasion where she was offering a job to a potential employee, and when that employee asked to have time to talk it over with his wife overnight, she said, "You have 5 seconds." And he thought she was kidding. And then she started to count down. 5, 4, 3. And by the time she got to 1, he said, "I don't want the job. If I have to make a decision without talking to my wife, I don't want the job." I know that she's made comments to people in the community that she has a problem with the Mount Vernon Nazarene University. And I have a problem with that. She's made comments that if you went to school, pardon me? Okay, if you went to school here at Mount Vernon and then went to Mount Vernon Nazarene University, you do not have enough experience, and has, I know, allowed 3 people, qualified people, not to go here as employees because they graduated from here, and that's not right. Thank you.